The mail-order bride no one wanted, until a cowboy asked, "Will you try with me?" She arrived in the small frontier town just after sunrise, when the air was still cool and the streets were quiet except for the slow movement of horses and wagons beginning their daily work. The journey had been long, and the dust from the road clung to her clothes and hair, but she stood straight as she stepped down from the wagon. People nearby paused for a moment, curious but careful, watching her with interest that felt heavy even from a distance. Word had spread before she arrived. Everyone knew she was a mail-order bride. She carried only one small suitcase and a folded letter that confirmed her purpose for coming west. Inside that letter were promises of a new beginning, of a man willing to build a life with her, and of a town ready to welcome someone willing to work hard. Yet the moment she set foot on the wooden platform, she sensed that reality would not be as simple as the words she had read during the long journey. The town itself was modest. Wooden buildings lined the main street, each showing signs of years of weather and effort. A general store stood at the center, with a porch where several men sat watching the morning unfold. A bakery released the warm smell of fresh bread, and somewhere a bell rang softly as a shop opened its door. It should have felt hopeful, but instead she felt exposed, as though every step she took invited silent judgment. The man who had arranged for her arrival did not come. She waited near the platform for nearly an hour, trying to appear calm even as uncertainty grew inside her. A few townspeople approached politely, asking if she needed help or directions, but their curiosity lingered longer than their kindness. Eventually, one older woman from the general store offered to let her sit inside and drink water while they waited. The woman accepted with a quiet thank you, grateful for even small gestures of warmth. By midday, it became clear that something had gone wrong. The man who was supposed to meet her had changed his mind after hearing rumors about her appearance. The explanation came through a short message delivered by a boy who seemed embarrassed to carry it. The note contained no apology, only a brief statement that he would not continue with the arrangement. She read the words slowly, then folded the paper carefully as if protecting herself from their meaning. Her expression did not change much, but the silence around her deepened. The older woman behind the store counter sighed softly, offering sympathy without pressing for details. Over the next few days, several other men who had expressed interest came to meet her. They were curious, hopeful even, but something always shifted once they saw her. Some tried to hide their disappointment with polite smiles. Others avoided conversation entirely. She responded with quiet dignity, answering questions honestly and never showing anger, though each rejection added weight to her heart. She found a small room to rent above the general store. It was simple, with a narrow bed, a wooden chair, and a window that looked out over the dusty street below. At night, she sat by the window watching lanterns flicker in the distance, wondering if she had made a mistake by coming so far from home. Yet each morning she woke early, determined not to give up on the chance she had taken. To support herself, she began offering help wherever it was needed. She repaired torn clothes, cleaned kitchens, and assisted families with daily chores. Slowly, people began to notice her work ethic. She did not complain or expect special treatment. She simply worked quietly and thanked those who trusted her with small tasks. Despite this, she remained an outsider. Children were kinder than adults. They asked honest questions and accepted her answers without judgment. One young girl often followed her around the market, fascinated by her calm manner and soft voice. Moments like these gave her small sparks of hope, reminders that not everyone saw her through the same narrow lens. Among those observing her from afar was a cowboy named Daniel. He visited town only once or twice a week, usually to buy supplies for his ranch. He was known as hardworking but reserved, a man who spoke little but listened carefully. He noticed how she helped an elderly man carry heavy bags without being asked, and how she thanked people even when they barely acknowledged her. Daniel had his own history of loss and quiet struggle. Life had taught him to recognize strength that others overlooked. While some men focused on appearance or expectations, he watched how she moved through disappointment without bitterness. Something about her steady presence drew his attention. One afternoon, while she was repairing a torn coat on the porch, a group of men laughed nearby about the unwanted bride. Their words were not loud, but she heard them. She paused only for a moment before continuing her work, her hands steady despite the sting. Daniel happened to witness this scene. He saw not only the cruelty of the comment, but also the dignity with which she ignored it. That moment stayed with him. Days passed, and she settled into a routine. Work during the day, quiet reflection at night. She wrote letters she never sent, describing her new life and the challenges she faced. She reminded herself that she had come west for change, not comfort. Yet loneliness crept into her thoughts more often as the initial hope faded. One evening, the town hosted a small gathering at the hall. Music played softly, and people gathered to share food and conversation. She attended because the store owner encouraged her, saying it would help her feel included. At first, she stood near the wall, observing rather than participating. Couples laughed and danced while she watched from the edge, unsure where she belonged. During the gathering, another potential suitor approached her, encouraged by friends who believed he should give her a chance. Their conversation began politely, but soon felt forced. He asked questions as if checking items off a list rather than trying to know her as a person. When he left early without explanation, she understood the outcome without needing words. After the event ended, she stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sky stretched wide above her, filled with quiet stars. She sat on a wooden bench near the town hall, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion. For the first time since arriving, doubt nearly overwhelmed her. She wondered if the journey had been foolish, if perhaps she truly did not belong anywhere. Footsteps approached slowly. Daniel stopped a few steps away, giving her space. He had considered speaking to her before, but had not wanted to intrude. Now, seeing her alone under the soft light of the lantern, he felt it was the right moment. He greeted her simply, without awkward sympathy or forced cheerfulness. Their conversation began with ordinary topics: the weather, the ranch, the long days of work that defined life in the frontier. She appreciated how he did not ask about rumors or failed arrangements. Instead, he spoke as if she were already part of the town. After a pause, Daniel looked at her with calm honesty. He explained that he needed help at his ranch, not just with work, but with building a life that felt less lonely. He admitted he was not offering an easy path or grand promises. He only wanted to ask a simple question. "Will you try with me?" he said quietly. The words surprised her. They carried no pressure, no expectations beyond willingness to try. She searched his face for signs of pity, but found only sincerity. For the first time since arriving, she felt seen as more than a disappointment or an obligation. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she sat silently, letting the moment settle. The night air felt different now, lighter somehow. The question was not just about partnership, but about hope. It was an invitation to start again, not as someone unwanted, but as someone valued. She did not answer Daniel right away that night. The question stayed with her long after they went their separate ways. As she walked back toward her small room above the general store, her thoughts moved between hope and caution. She had come west believing in promises once before, and she had learned how easily expectations could break. Yet something about Daniel's words felt different. He had not asked for perfection. He had only asked her to try. The next morning arrived with soft sunlight and the familiar sounds of wagons rolling across the street below. She sat at the edge of her bed, thinking carefully. She told herself that agreeing did not mean giving up control of her future. It meant allowing herself a chance to see where honesty and effort might lead. After finishing her morning chores at the store, she walked toward the edge of town where Daniel usually tied his horse when he visited. He was there, loading supplies onto a saddle. When he noticed her approaching, he paused, giving her time to speak first. She explained that she was willing to come to the ranch for a while, but only to see if they could build something real. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. Daniel nodded, accepting her conditions without hesitation. He explained that his ranch was small and still needed much work, and that life there would not be easy. She appreciated his honesty. They left town together later that day, riding side by side along a dusty trail that stretched into open land. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It felt thoughtful, like two people learning how to move forward without rushing. The landscape around them changed gradually, from clustered buildings to wide fields and distant hills. The air felt clearer away from the town, and she felt a quiet sense of relief. When they reached the ranch, she saw a modest house surrounded by fencing that showed signs of wear. A few animals grazed nearby, and tools leaned against the barn walls. Nothing about the place looked impressive, yet it carried a feeling of possibility. Daniel showed her around carefully, explaining what needed repair and what he hoped to improve in the coming months. He did not expect her to understand everything immediately. Instead, he encouraged her to settle in at her own pace. The first evening was simple. She helped prepare a meal while Daniel tended to the animals. They spoke about ordinary things, where she grew up, what work she had done before traveling west, and how he had built the ranch from little more than empty land. Their conversation flowed slowly but naturally, without the pressure she had felt with other men who seemed to evaluate her rather than know her. Days passed, and she began to learn the rhythm of ranch life. She woke early, helping with feeding animals and organizing supplies. At first, she made small mistakes, unfamiliar with certain tasks, but Daniel never criticized her. Instead, he showed her how to improve, encouraging her without making her feel incapable. This approach slowly built trust between them. She discovered that she enjoyed working outdoors. The physical effort gave her a sense of purpose she had not felt before. Each completed task felt like proof that she belonged somewhere. Daniel noticed how she approached work with patience and determination. He admired how she asked questions rather than pretending to know everything. Their conversations grew longer as days turned into weeks. Sometimes they shared stories near the fire after sunset. Daniel spoke about losing family members and how loneliness had shaped his life. She listened quietly, recognizing the strength it took for him to share those memories. In return, she opened up about the rejection she had faced both before and after arriving in town. Instead of offering empty reassurance, Daniel simply acknowledged her feelings, which meant more than grand words. Despite the peaceful progress, uncertainty still existed. She often wondered if she was only a temporary guest rather than a true partner. Daniel, on the other hand, worried about asking too much too soon. He respected her independence and did not want her to feel trapped. Their shared caution created moments of distance, but those moments also allowed trust to grow slowly. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered unexpectedly. A strong storm moved across the land, bringing heavy wind and rain. Fences broke under pressure, and animals began to scatter. Daniel moved quickly, trying to secure everything before more damage occurred. Without waiting for instructions, she joined him, helping guide animals toward safer areas and securing loose equipment. The storm tested both of them. Rain soaked their clothes, and the wind made every movement difficult. Yet they worked side by side, communicating without hesitation. At one point, a section of fencing collapsed completely, and she suggested using nearby materials to create a temporary barrier. Daniel followed her idea, realizing she had already learned more than he expected. When the storm finally passed, the ranch looked worn but still standing. They sat on the porch afterward, exhausted but relieved. Daniel thanked her sincerely, telling her that he could not have handled everything alone. Hearing those words affected her deeply. For the first time, she felt not like someone being helped, but like someone who contributed equally. In the following days, they repaired the damage together. The work strengthened their partnership. They laughed occasionally, sharing small jokes that eased the seriousness of daily challenges. She began to feel comfortable enough to tease him gently, and he responded with a rare smile that revealed a softer side of his personality. News of their arrangement slowly reached the town. Some people remained doubtful, believing she would leave once she realized how much effort ranch life required. Others admired her determination and began to speak of her differently. Although she tried not to think about outside opinions, she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing she was changing how people saw her. As time passed, she realized she was no longer constantly waiting for rejection. The fear that had followed her since arriving in town began to fade. Instead, she focused on small daily victories, learning new skills, building routines, and sharing meaningful moments with Daniel. One evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky with soft colors, she asked Daniel why he had chosen to approach her that night outside the town hall. He considered the question carefully before answering. He said he saw someone strong who deserved a fair chance, and he believed that life worked best when two people tried together instead of alone. His answer was simple but sincere. She did not respond immediately, but she felt warmth spread through her chest. The idea that someone had seen her strength rather than her flaws changed something inside her. She began to imagine a future where she was not defined by rejection but by resilience. Still, uncertainty lingered. She knew that building a life together required more than shared work and quiet conversations. It required trust, patience, and time. As she looked at the land stretching beyond the ranch, she realized she was standing at the beginning of something new, something fragile but promising. The question Daniel had asked weeks earlier continued to guide them both. They were not rushing toward a perfect ending. Instead, they were learning step by step how to try together, discovering that sometimes the simplest promise was the strongest foundation for change. Life on the ranch slowly found its rhythm, and as the weeks turned into months, she began to feel something she had not expected. So soon, a quiet sense of belonging. Each morning started before sunrise. The air felt cool and fresh, and the soft sounds of animals waking filled the space around the small house. She learned how to prepare feed, how to check fences, and how to organize tools so that work moved smoothly throughout the day. At first, she followed Daniel's instructions carefully, unsure of her own abilities. But over time, she began to take initiative. She noticed small problems before they became serious and suggested solutions without hesitation. Daniel appreciated this more than he said openly. He was not a man of many words, but his trust showed through small gestures, handing her responsibilities without doubt, listening when she spoke, and sharing decisions rather than making them alone. The land itself changed with the season. Grass grew thicker, animals looked stronger, and the ranch slowly began to show signs of improvement. They repaired old structures together, laughing sometimes when plans did not work perfectly. These moments created a bond that felt natural rather than forced. She also began to visit town more often. At first, she felt nervous returning to the place where she had faced so much rejection, yet she noticed something different now. People greeted her with genuine respect. The shop owner thanked her for helping Daniel's ranch grow stronger. A neighbor asked for advice about sewing. Even the children ran toward her with excitement, happy to see someone who listened to their stories. Still, not everything felt easy. One afternoon, while she stood near a market stall, a traveling merchant arrived. He looked at her with recognition, his eyes narrowing as he tried to place her memory. After a moment, he greeted her by name, mentioning the town she had come from before traveling west. The sound of her past spoken aloud made her chest tighten. The merchant spoke casually, unaware of how his words affected her. He mentioned how people back home had considered her unlikely to find a match. He laughed lightly as if repeating harmless gossip, but each word felt heavy. She forced a polite smile and ended the conversation quickly, leaving the market earlier than planned. The encounter stayed with her during the ride back to the ranch. Old doubts returned, whispering that she had only been chosen because others had refused her. She wondered if Daniel's kindness came from pity rather than genuine admiration. By the time she reached the ranch, her mood had shifted completely. Daniel noticed the change immediately. She spoke less during dinner, avoiding eye contact. He wanted to ask what was wrong but hesitated, unsure how to begin. He respected her space, believing she would speak when ready, but the silence between them grew heavier. Over the next few days, she threw herself into work with unusual intensity. She avoided long conversations and focused only on tasks. Daniel felt the distance but did not understand its cause. He worried that perhaps ranch life had become too difficult or that she missed her previous home more than she admitted. One evening, while organizing supplies in the barn, she paused and looked around. The place felt familiar now, filled with shared memories and effort. Yet a voice inside her questioned whether she truly belonged. She imagined leaving before things became too serious, before she risked another painful rejection. That night, she packed a small bag quietly, planning to leave at dawn. She told herself it would be easier this way. If she left by choice, she would not have to wait for someone else to change their mind. Morning arrived slowly. The sky carried soft shades of pink as she stepped outside, her bag in hand. She moved quietly toward the path leading away from the ranch. Before she could reach the gate, Daniel appeared from the barn. He had noticed signs of her restlessness the night before and had woken early, sensing something was wrong. He stopped a few steps away, his expression calm but concerned. He asked where she was going. She hesitated, unsure how to explain feelings that seemed confusing even to herself. Finally, she admitted that she feared becoming a burden, that she worried he had only asked her to stay because he felt sorry for her situation. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he took a deep breath and spoke slowly. He told her that he had never invited her out of pity. He had seen strength in her from the beginning, strength that others had overlooked. He admitted that he admired her courage, her honesty, and the way she faced challenges without losing kindness. His words surprised her. She had expected reassurance, but instead he spoke with quiet conviction, as if stating something obvious. He explained that the ranch had changed because of her efforts and that he had changed too. He no longer felt alone in the way he once had. The conversation lasted a long time. Both shared fears they had kept hidden. She admitted how deeply past rejection had shaped her thoughts. He confessed that he feared losing someone important again and therefore avoided expressing feelings too quickly. By the end of their talk, the tension between them softened. She set her bag down slowly, realizing that leaving would not solve the uncertainty she felt inside. Instead, she chose to stay, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to continue building something real with him. In the following days, their connection felt stronger and more open. They laughed more freely and spoke honestly about hopes for the future. The ranch continued to grow, reflecting the partnership they were learning to build. One evening, while watching the sunset, she noticed how peaceful she felt sitting beside him. The fear that once followed her had not disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled her decisions. She began to understand that belonging was not something given instantly. It was something created through shared effort and trust. As the sky darkened and stars appeared one by one, she realized that this chapter of her life was not defined by being unwanted. Instead, it was defined by choosing to stay, to trust, and to believe that sometimes the greatest change begins when two people decide to try together. Time continued to move forward, and with each passing week, the ranch began to feel less like a temporary place and more like a true home. The small improvements they made together slowly changed the land. Broken fences were replaced with stronger ones, tools were organized more carefully, and the animals looked healthier than before. She found pride in seeing visible results from their shared effort. Daniel noticed these changes too, though he rarely praised loudly. Instead, he showed appreciation through trust, allowing her to make decisions and manage certain responsibilities on her own. The rhythm of daily life grew steady. Early mornings started with quiet conversation over coffee, followed by hours of work under the open sky. Some days were physically exhausting, but there was comfort in knowing they were building something together. She began to feel stronger not only physically, but emotionally as well. The doubts that once followed her constantly now appeared less often. Word about the ranch's progress reached the town. Neighbors who had once questioned her presence now spoke differently. When she visited the general store, people greeted her warmly. The older woman who had first helped her smiled proudly, commenting on how confident she seemed now. These small moments reminded her how far she had come since the day she arrived feeling unwanted and uncertain. One afternoon, the town announced a seasonal gathering, a celebration meant to bring everyone together after months of hard work. Daniel hesitated about attending, preferring the quiet of the ranch, but she encouraged him. She felt ready to face the town not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged. Preparing for the gathering felt strangely exciting. She chose simple clothes that were practical yet neat, reflecting her new sense of confidence. When they arrived, people greeted them as a pair rather than as strangers standing apart. Music played, children ran between tables, and laughter filled the air. For the first time, she did not stand near the wall observing from a distance. Instead, she joined conversations naturally, sharing stories about ranch life. Daniel watched her from across the room, noticing how easily she smiled now. He remembered the quiet woman sitting alone outside the town hall months earlier and felt grateful for the change he witnessed. He also realized how much her presence had affected him. The ranch no longer felt like a place of endless work and silence. It felt alive. During the gathering, a wealthy ranch owner named Mr. Carter approached Daniel. He was known for expanding his land and making business offers that benefited him more than others. He spoke politely but directly, offering to buy Daniel's ranch at a price that sounded generous at first, but was actually far below the land's true potential. Carter explained that managing a small ranch alone could be difficult and suggested that selling would provide security. Daniel listened carefully but did not answer immediately. The offer stayed in his mind long after the conversation ended. Financial struggles had always been part of ranch life, and the idea of stability held some appeal. Yet selling meant giving up the place where he had invested years of effort, and the place where he and she had begun building something meaningful. On the ride back home, he shared the offer with her. She listened quietly, thinking before speaking. Instead of telling him what decision to make, she asked questions about his dreams for the ranch and what he truly wanted for his future. Her approach helped him realize that the decision was not only about money, but about purpose. Over the following days, they discussed possibilities. She suggested ways to increase income by improving how they managed supplies and selling certain products directly in town. Daniel admired her ability to see solutions where he had only seen problems. Together, they created a plan that felt both realistic and hopeful. The decision to refuse the offer strengthened their partnership. Daniel realized he trusted her judgment deeply. She, in turn, felt proud that her ideas were valued. Their conversations grew more open, touching not only on work but also on dreams they had never dared to voice before. As the ranch continued to improve, neighbors began visiting more often. Some came to trade supplies, others simply to talk. The once quiet house filled with occasional laughter and shared meals. She found joy in creating a welcoming space, something she had longed for during years of feeling invisible. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the hills. The sky turned shades of gold and soft purple, and the land stretched wide before them. Daniel spoke about how different life felt now compared to before she arrived. He admitted that he used to believe solitude was easier than risking disappointment. She listened, understanding the courage behind his words. She shared her own reflections, explaining how she once believed she would always remain someone people overlooked. The ranch had changed that belief slowly, showing her that value came from effort and authenticity rather than fitting expectations. Their bond deepened through these honest conversations. They did not rush into grand promises, but the quiet understanding between them felt stronger than any dramatic declaration. Trust had grown step by step, shaped by shared challenges and small victories. As autumn approached, the land required preparation for colder months. They worked side by side, storing supplies and strengthening shelters. Each task felt like an investment in their future. During one particularly long day, they laughed over a small mistake that sent a pile of hay falling unexpectedly. Moments like these reminded them that life did not need to be perfect to be meaningful. The town gathering returned in their thoughts often. It had marked a turning point, not only in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. She no longer felt defined by past rejection. Instead, she felt defined by resilience and growth. One night, while organizing tools in the barn, she paused and looked around. The space felt familiar, filled with memories of shared effort. She realized that the question Daniel had asked months earlier, "Will you try with me?" had become more than a simple invitation. It had become a foundation for a life built on partnership. Outside, the wind moved gently through the fields. She stepped onto the porch and saw Daniel standing there, watching the stars appear one by one. They did not speak immediately. Silence between them felt comfortable, filled with understanding rather than uncertainty. In that quiet moment, she understood that belonging was not about being chosen by many people. It was about finding one place where effort, trust, and respect created something real. The ranch had become that place, and together they had transformed not only the land but themselves as well. Winter arrived slowly, bringing cold winds and long, quiet nights. The ranch looked different under pale skies, and the air carried a sharp chill that reminded them how fragile success could be. Preparing for the season had taken weeks of effort, and now they faced the true test of whether their planning and teamwork would hold strong. She woke early each morning, wrapping herself in warm layers before stepping outside. Frost covered the ground, and the animals needed extra care to stay healthy. Daniel worked beside her without complaint, though she noticed the tiredness in his eyes after long days. They supported each other silently, sharing the weight of responsibility without needing constant words. The colder months meant fewer visitors and less activity from town, which created both peace and isolation. Even so, she found comfort in the routines they had built. Cooking meals together, repairing tools near the fire, and sharing stories during long evenings made the house feel warm despite the weather outside. One morning, they discovered that a heavy storm during the night had damaged part of the storage shed. Supplies were scattered, and one section of the roof had collapsed under the weight of snow. For a moment, discouragement threatened to return. The work they had done all year suddenly felt fragile. Instead of giving in to frustration, they focused on solving the problem together. She suggested organizing the remaining supplies first to prevent further loss, while Daniel began repairing the damaged structure. Their cooperation turned a difficult situation into an opportunity to strengthen their teamwork even more. By the end of the day, the shed was secure again, and they sat side by side on the porch, tired but proud of what they had accomplished. As winter deepened, financial concerns also appeared. Fewer buyers visited the ranch, and they had to manage resources carefully. She reviewed their records and found ways to reduce waste and increase efficiency. Daniel admired her practical thinking and realized how much her presence had transformed the way he approached challenges. Where he once faced problems alone, he now shared decisions and trusted another perspective. Despite the hardships, small moments of joy continued to appear. One evening, they watched a group of birds flying across the sky as the sun set behind distant hills. Another day, a neighbor stopped by unexpectedly with fresh bread as a gesture of gratitude for help they had given earlier in the year. These moments reminded them that community and kindness still existed even during difficult times. During a particularly cold night, the wind howled loudly around the house, making sleep difficult. She sat near the fire, wrapped in a blanket, reflecting on how much her life had changed. Months earlier, she had arrived in town feeling unwanted and unsure of her future. Now she sat in a place where her work mattered and her presence was valued. The transformation felt both surprising and deeply meaningful. Daniel joined her by the fire, sensing her thoughtful mood. They spoke quietly about the past year, the struggles, the laughter, the risks they had taken. He admitted that asking her to try with him had been one of the bravest decisions he had ever made. She smiled gently, acknowledging that agreeing to stay had been equally brave for her. As winter slowly began to fade, signs of spring appeared. Snow melted into small streams and the air grew softer. With the change in season came new opportunities. Buyers returned, interested in the healthy animals and improved land. The ranch began to recover financially, proving that their persistence had been worthwhile. One afternoon, Daniel asked her to walk with him to the far edge of the property. The fields stretched wide, filled with early signs of growth. He stopped near a tree that overlooked the valley below and spoke carefully, choosing his words with honesty rather than grand emotion. He told her that the ranch was no longer just his. It had become theirs through shared effort and trust. He explained that when he first asked her to try with him, he had hoped for partnership but never expected how deeply she would change his life. He no longer felt like a man surviving alone. Instead, he felt part of something stronger and more meaningful. She listened quietly, her heart full but calm. The moment felt natural rather than dramatic. She realized that love for them had grown slowly through shared work and mutual respect rather than sudden declarations. She answered honestly, saying that she had come west searching for a place where she could belong, and she had found it not through promises but through actions. They stood together watching the land, understanding that their journey was not about reaching perfection but about continuing forward side by side. In the weeks that followed, the ranch thrived more than ever before. Neighbors spoke of their success with admiration. The town that once viewed her with doubt now saw her as a symbol of strength and determination. She carried herself with quiet confidence, no longer shaped by past rejection. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with warm colors, they sat on the porch reflecting on how far they had come. Daniel turned to her and repeated the question that had started everything. "Will you try with me?" This time, the words carried new meaning. She smiled, knowing that the answer had been unfolding every day since that first conversation. The story did not end with grand celebrations or dramatic change. Instead, it ended with something more powerful: stability, trust, and the quiet certainty that they had built a life together through patience and courage. She realized that she had never truly been unwanted. She had simply been waiting for the right place and the right person to see her true worth.